Former Sydney school teacher Chris Dawson has been sentenced for the murder of his first wife Lynette in 1982. Here's Justice Ian Harrison this afternoon.
Christopher Michael Dawson, for the murder of Lynette Dawson on or about 8 January 1982, I sentence you to imprisonment for 24 years commencing on 30 August 2022 and expiring on 29 August 2046, with a non-parole period of 18 years expiring on 29 August 2040.
The 74-year-old will be 92 years old when he's eligible for parole, meaning he'll likely die in jail. Let me bring in Hedley Thomas, the National Chief Correspondent with the Australian newspaper and creator of the Teacher's Pet podcast. Thanks for joining us once again, Hedley. First up, does this sentence meet your expectations and those of the family who you know so well?
Hi, Chris. Thanks for having me. Yes, I believe it does. The sentence was, in fact, stronger than some anticipated. I spoke to a number of criminal defence lawyers beforehand, and they were not going as far as Justice Harrison did. But, he gave a very detailed reasoning and went through all of the factors and understood that Chris would likely die in jail before he would get parole, but the severity of this murder, the circumstances, the lies, the terrible denial of a mother to 2 little girls, the intent that Chris had, all of it really demanded a very powerful sentence. And, I believe that most people would absolutely agree that this was appropriate.
Yeah, I think the feeling that many of us would be left with, and I'm interested in your thoughts on this because you know the victim's family so well and you're so close to it, and that is, of course, that Chris Dawson has had nearly 40 years since this murder, when he went on to marry the girl he was obsessed with, have a divorce and then have other relationships. He's had other children. In other words, he got the life for nearly 40 years that he wanted this murder to give him. So in some ways, you can't punish him severely enough, can you?
Well, that's right. And, that's, I think, one of the issues that must be weighed by judges in a situation like this. Every judge is going to bring different, as this judge called it, idiosyncratic issues to bear. We all have different values and bring different ideas into reasonings such as this. But Chris Dawson's lived his best life, as you point out. He's remarried twice and he's had multiple opportunities to come clean, but he continued to wage this deceitful campaign, this very hurtful campaign for Lynn's family, for her siblings, for her parents going to their deaths, not knowing what had happened to their daughter. And the fact that Chris Dawson will be 92 if he can survive in jail for 18 years when he's due for parole, I think meets expectations, but he couldn't probably have... It would have been difficult for him to give him much more, given the life expectancy as well.
The one catch, of course, is any appeal, the possibility that he could get out on appeal. Do you expect that this verdict will be appealed by Chris Dawson?
I've got no doubt that it will be appealed, Chris, and the courts will look at that as they should. Every convicted murderer wants to run an appeal. And Chris Dawson, although he won't have Greg Walsh, his longtime solicitor, in his corner, will take his chances. But it'll be a matter for the courts. They'll go through Justice Harrison's reasons that he delivered at the end of August when he convicted him. If they find something that stands out that they believe may give rise to an appeal, no doubt we'll hear about it. I don't know. It's hard. It's really hard to see. I think what's different in this case, of course, is that in jury trials, we don't know why the jurors landed on a guilty or not guilty verdict. We just know what it is. They don't set out detailed reasons. In this case, Justice Harrison went to a great deal of trouble and detail to explain exactly why he was very sure that Chris Dawson did murder Lynette in January 1982. And he set out the most compelling pieces of evidence, which in his view were unavoidable, and as well as all the lies that Chris had told along the way. So that's the sort of material that the appeal court will be able to look at, and I think that makes it harder to win an appeal.
Good. That is a good thing. Now, I just want to show you and our viewers something that we talked before about. You mentioned how Chris Dawson has been able to live his best life up until now. For Lynette Dawson's family, of course, it's been a different story. This is her brother, Greg Sims, after today's sentencing.
We really didn't believe this day would ever come. What we need now is to find Lynn and put her to rest. It's our time to begin living our lives without having this hanging over our heads. Chris Dawson has had 40 years of freedom. Now it's our turn.
Yeah, you've got to feel so much for that family. Now, Hedley, you've broken so many big stories in your time. We've spoken often and praised you for your work on this case with the podcast and your reporting that helped encourage police to get back into it, and you've had this outcome now. And you're still doing it with the forensic scandal that you've unearthed in Queensland as we speak. When you think of all those stories you've broken and that have led to inquiries and justice being dispensed, does the human dimension of this make it especially rewarding for you, especially satisfying to see justice done?
It really does, Chris. This is one in a million. The people I've met who have trusted me, Greg Sims, who you just heard from, his wife Marilyn, Greg's sister Pat, all of the students, former students of Cromer High and other Northern Beaches schools I got to know, Lynn's circle of friends, friends from her high school, friends from her nursing years, friends from Gilwinga Drive, Bayview, people like Julie Andrew and Sue Strath and Annette Leary and so many great people who trusted me and trusted that the podcast and all of the journalism that we were doing might make a difference, because they had been so frustrated after 36 years. There had been such utter failure by the criminal justice system, by the institutions that should have done so much very early in the piece. Didn't even investigate Lynn's disappearance as foul play for a decade.
Extraordinary.
And then repeated failures by the DPP to act. So this is a special case, and I just feel enormously privileged. And a bit like Greg Sims, I think while we'll all be connected and remain friends, you know, it is an opportunity for us to move forward, to turn the page. This has been a black cloud hanging over the Sims family for 40 years. It's only touched me in 2001 when I first looked at it, and then for the past 5 years. And it really grabs you, you know, it brings you in and you want to give it everything. But now with the sentencing, I think that we can start to draw a line.
Yeah, good on you, mate. Congratulations, Hedley. Crack a 4X and have a relaxing Friday night. I really appreciate you joining us.